Have you ever done a spacewalk?
Yeah, I've done two. I was Canada's first spacewalker. In fact, we made a new $5 bill to commemorate it, and I got to unveil. It's a blue bill. In Canada, we have plastic money, and I'll look at my wallet while we're talking. They made a bill commemorate. Oh yeah, here it is. You can't probably see it, but on the back of this bill, there's a spacewalker on the Canadian 5. And,
wow.
I got to unveil, and there's the big Canadian robot arm that's on the space station. And I got to unveil this bill. And the Bank of Canada has asked me to sign a lot of, and a lot of people ask me to sign $5 bills a lot. Yeah. So it's a wild experience. I did two spacewalks and spent about, if you total them, about 15 hours outside. So that's 10 times around the world while I was outside by myself. Hands down, coolest experience of my whole life.
Please explain how that felt.
It starts, well, I trained for it for years, and then to invent the spacewalk, you don't just randomly go out for spacewalks. But it finally comes down to the day you're going to do a spacewalk, and putting on that huge white spacesuit. I don't think there's one in the shelves behind me, but putting on that huge white spacesuit is super. I don't even have a picture of it. Super uncomfortable and bulky, and it weighs more than you do. But it's your little one-person spaceship. We call it a spacesuit, but it's a one-person spaceship is what it is, custom fit to your body. And you depressurize in the airlock. It gets quieter and quieter until there's no sound but your own breathing. And then I was the first one out to hatch. So you turn this knob, you pull this hatch out of the way, and then there's the universe out, through this hole. And grab on with both hands and pull yourself out. And imagine this next time you're in a toilet stall. Imagine, you're sitting in a public toilet stall or something, you know what that confine feels like. Imagine if when you open the toilet stall, you're now standing on top of Mount Everest. And you're like, put the toilet stall back again and go out. It's like, how can these two things be next to each other? To have been inside the confines of the airlock in the spaceship, and now to be out three-dimensionally in the universe, where the Earth is now in the distance. It's separate from you. You don't even, every time you've looked at space, whether you're imagining it before going to sleep or go out in the yard, you are in your mama's lap, right? You're in Mother Earth's lap looking at the universe. But now suddenly you're looking back at the world, and the world is kind of a shocker because now it's a planet. It's like looking at the moon or whatever. It's not even where you are anymore. And you don't feel like an earthling anymore. You feel psychologically separate from that part of your life. And so it's overwhelmingly profound. And you got a million things to do, and you're busy and working, and the suit's super hard on your body. You come out of the suit bloody because it beats you up. And I had a lot of problems during my spacewalks that we had to deal with. We triumphed eventually over everything, but it was wicked. But it changed my perception of the three-dimensionality of the universe and of our place in it, forever. And I think it should. That an experience like that, it's the rarest of all human experiences. There are way, way more people have won Nobel Prizes than have done spacewalks. It's brand new. And to see the world that way, I'm talking a lot, but the coolest moment was we were coming south of Australia in the dark, and just south of Tasmania, south of Hobart there. And we went through the Aurora while I was outside. We went through the Southern Lights. They were like rippling around the ship and pouring between my legs. And they're mostly green and red, but with your naked eyeball, you can see other trace gases that are fluorescing there. So there's other colors. And I could not believe my luck. How did I get here? How did my life, and sure, I worked my whole life and, had some luck and took a lot of chances, but to have been there, to have been surfing on the Aurora, just phenomenal experience.
This is one of the happiest moments of my life. And I'm not joking. I'm serious. I'm not joking. I've had many really good moments, but this is literally one of the happiest moments of my life. When you just told me that you were inside the Northern Lights, the Aurora Lights.
Southern Lights. The Aurora Australis.
Southern Lights. And you're like sitting there in a spaceship, and the Southern Lights are like right here in front of your face, and you're feeling them and you're seeing them and you're being touched by them. I'm sorry. I mean, it does not get better than, I mean, it's just beyond my understanding, my capacity to understand. I mean, it is like the most unbelievable experience. And I'm just experiencing it through you telling me. I'm telling you, if I had that experience, I think I don't know what would happen to me. For the people listening today, clearly you've been through a lot, right?
Not bad.
Yeah. And I'm sure there are some people who have been through a lot who are listening in, right?
Yeah.
So we touched on it a little bit. What specific advice would you give someone who is feeling completely overwhelmed, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's family related, whatever it is related to? Because you've told me and those who are listening that there's a way that you do it, right? And in a simple format, what would you say to someone listening that needs a little bit of help?
First of all, I love you. If you can let that sink in for a second. Because I can say that to you, that proves to you there's love in the world. And if there's love in the world, that means there's equanimity. It isn't all just that. It can feel that way, right? It can feel that way, that everything, and then your brain gets going and starts to feed into it and point out all the things, right? That old tape starts running, and you have to stop it and sort of flip the script. When it has happened to me, when it feels like everything is falling apart, and then outside in the world, it feels like it's falling apart, and then your tape starts running in your head, I stop myself and I get out my book. It's a journal. It's a gratitude journal. I was annoyed by it at first, and then I started writing in it. On one page, I wrote 5 things I was grateful for. And I really considered it. Some days it was just the warm blanket on my knees while I was reading a cup of tea. Sometimes it was a really great conversation with my mom that day. Sometimes it was just the feeling of the sun beating on my face. This was during the pandemic. Those are things that I could have. And then on the other page, I just wrote. I'm not really a great writer. I just did stream of consciousness, but I put it down. And at some point in my life, it will be a bit of a diary of what went on during the pandemic. But I did that every day. And all of that gratitude started to change things for me. I still do it. I still do it. I stay in gratitude. And it is hard. I hear you. It is hard. It is hard. So gratitude for me is one thing. Breathing is another. And also, this is going to sound annoying, but I found tremendous help in breath. Sitting down, breathing in for 4, holding it for 7, slowly releasing for 8, and doing it again. And suddenly I found that my shoulders dropped a little bit. My breathing was regulated. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't sweating. Those are 2 things that I've done to sort of down-regulate myself, to remind myself that as chaotic as it is, as a person of faith, I believe that there is purpose. As a person who believes that the universe is here to support us, isn't just here to crap all over us and leave us weeping in a ditch. There is parity, there is equilibrium in the universe. When someone is taken from us, another place in the world, a baby is born with hope and expectation. I have to believe that. Seek out your light sources. Fill your Instagram feed with good stuff. Watch a comment. Watch I Love Lucy. Read a book that makes you feel good. Listen to music, because that music, little Chris Stapleton, lift your soul right up. Play something, make something, do something. That usually gets me out of my funk.
You mentioned about adrenaline junkiness.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So I was going to actually ask you that earlier. Clearly, you're an adrenaline junkie, because someone that makes a commitment to visit 197 countries, including Somalia, including Syria, including Afghanistan, places where you're not, yes, you may be welcomed by the everyday person, but there are people out there that don't want you to be there, right?
Of course. Yeah.
How did the adrenaline junkie side of you necessarily find travel, right? You could have been an adrenaline junkie in so many other different ways, but it seems to have been travel. And the second part of that question is that the adrenaline junkie in you, when you've reached, I know we talked about this earlier, but when you reach the 197 countries, I know there are other places you can visit, right? But it's like you've done it. So how do you get that fix?
I never use the words adrenaline junkie to explain who I am, which is interesting to hear that, because I am, I guess. When I think of adrenaline junkie, I think of those Red Bull athletes that what do you call it? Cliff jump, 200 feet high. That's crazy adrenaline. I've bungee jumped 5 times. That's adrenaline to me. Walking around the streets of Mogadishu is debatably another level of adrenaline. How did I get that? How did I become that kind of adrenaline junkie? Maybe when I had a goal to visit every country, I started realizing how tough it would be and how I would have to put myself in these situations. And then I learned to show the opposite side and break the stereotypes. And so that's what I've been attracted to as a journalist, to be able to tell those stories and to be able to tell those beautiful stories about humanity in Afghanistan. I have to go to Afghanistan. You can't just sit from home and be well, Afghanistan people are really cool. You have to go there. So I just kind of morphed into that role. And then I just became obsessed with it the more I've done it. Once I finished the countries, that's only the beginning. That's only step one. I'm going to go back to Afghanistan. I'm going to go back to Venezuela. I'm going to go back and there's so many stories to tell within these places. And now that I've been there before, I know what to expect. I know how to film. I know how to approach people. I know what the 5 words of endearment are, how to respect the people. I know what to wear. It's always that first time you go is a little bit, don't know what to expect. But now it's really nice to, when I went back to Afghanistan, I keep bringing up Afghanistan because I just love the country and it's at the top of my mind. When I went back there, I just felt the pressure off my shoulders because I knew what was going on. And then it's a huge country. So Pakistan's another one. I love Pakistan. I only went for 2 weeks, but I would love the chance to go back and meet more people and tell more stories. And so, as I said, instead of chasing the countries, I'll be chasing the story. And so I have a spreadsheet of hundreds of stories that it's labeled by country. So India, I'll type in India and then here are the 5 stories I know I really want to tell. And then here, I'm always brainstorming more. So yeah, it's a never ending. The world is so big that here, another example is Russia, right? Unfortunately, I only went to Moscow, which is the biggest city, but it's also one city in a country that is so big. It has 11 time zones. That's how I explain Russia. So the US has 3 time zones from LA to New York, 3. Russia has 11 time zones, 11. So it's more than 3 times bigger east to west than the US. So, oh my God, I could spend a lot of time in Siberia and in Eastern Russia where they look Korean. I lived in Korea and there's a lot of Russians in Korea, but they look Korean because they're neighbors of Korea. Mind-blowing stuff. So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of places to go.
So I think we need, as leaders, we have to take it on ourselves to make sure the people underneath us are coming up and they're establishing their vulnerability, their gut intuition, their bowl filling capabilities in tandem with performance, in tandem with actually building their bowls.
Yeah. You said having an empty bowl moment.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people who are listening can relate to that. I can certainly relate to that, right?
You had a similar, right?
Yeah, like on the outside, it didn't just happen once. I mean, I'm not sure what you know about me, but I used to be a broker, and on the outside, I had everything you could ever want. And then I had that empty bowl moment where I was like, my bowl is completely empty, right? But then I had another empty bowl moment. Yeah, years later.
Too. Yeah? I did too. I did. I'll tell you about it. But what was your second one?
Yeah. And it was like, I'd had success with Netflix. I'd had success with my books, with my speeches. Yes. And I'm very proud of what I've done. But I kind of was like, well, is this it? Am I just going to do more speeches, do more shows, do more books? And will just my empty bowl in a few years' time be a bit bigger, right? But still empty. And if I'm going to be totally honest, which I am, I feel like I'm in that moment now. I'm still in that moment of looking at the empty bowl and saying to myself, wow, that's it. And there's part of me that's like, yeah, just keep going, get the bowl bigger. And there's part of me that's like, yeah, not so sure about that. Right?
Yep. I got you, boo. I got you.
Yeah. What was your second moment?
Well, when I had the first empty bowl moment, I thought the solution must be to serve. The solution must be to serve, help other people, right? That's how, if we feel like we chase performance and personal gratification and ego-driven things, the next thing you do is you help other people. So I started this big coaching business with 150 athletes, 7 assistant coaches. I had always coached, but no one ever left. So I just had the same 20 athletes for, 4 years. And I didn't feel like my knowledge was broadening at all. So I made a bigger house. And then I realized 2.5 years into that, like a couple things. One, revenue goals. How many athletes we had, how many coaches we had, how many training camps we were doing, right? How many Ironman finishes we had. Whoa, we're back to performance-based goals. 2, I was working all the time and had let go of my own sense of whatever. And 3, I was training people to go chase empty bowls. It's not serving if you go teach people how to walk down the wrong path. That's not serving. So I had a nervous breakdown. Yeah, big one, huge. My business, I had to close it in a month. Yeah, my husband had to close it because I was in bed, and I started having panic attacks. I had a ton of panic attacks. I had one that sent me to the ER because I couldn't breathe, and I thought I was having a heart attack in an auto body parking lot. Worst place to have a debilitating panic attack. And that was the moment that broke me. And I just was like, well, where do I go from here? And then I had to unpack the performance. So the books, amazing. The speaking, amazing. The message, amazing. What is it satisfying inside of you? And are we back to broker style performance metrics, which is easy to do when we're speaking and we have book sales and there's numbers of copies sold and you want these things to be successful and there's seats filled in auditoriums. Like, it's very hard to stay away from these performance-based metrics. And I don't think that the message is to eschew them, but I think the message is to always be looking inside of your heart and wondering, are we building the bowl or are we filling the bowl? Or are we doing a little bit of both? And where's the balance there? I think for every person, you're going to have to find that balance on your own, but you just got a red flag that you're back to bowl building and maybe not so much filling the bowl. And that's that's the daily practice for me, because I have to put food on the table. There's some performance metrics that we all need to kind of adhere to. Maybe not. I don't know. I won't put a box around it. But for me, I've got a daughter, so I'd like to feed her. So I understand that there's some performance metrics we'd like to have in life. But where's the balance of that? How many shells did we add to the bowl this week, this month? Or am I looking for the next thing inside that lights me up inside? If those moments are happening pretty regularly, I can kind of hop my way through life. But when the balance gets out of whack, then yeah, we're in that moment where we got to go back to the basics and ask the fundamental questions of life. And that's great. That's a gift. That spot you're in right now, it's a beautiful gift.
It is a gift. It is a gift. But I think many people get disheartened, right? For whatever happens in life, right? They get disheartened and they I don't want to say give up because that's a cliche, but they don't believe that they can reach that potential that each and every one of us can reach. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I've reached that point of like just thinking, well, you know what, F it. This is the way it's going to be, right? I'm just going to do what I need to do, and I'm not going to know on a soul being level that I am reaching for the stars, right? And you could think, oh, what are you talking about, Leon? You look at my website, you look at the speeches, you look at the books, you're clearly reaching the stars. But you know that what is sometimes on the outside is not always what's on the inside, right? And I've never heard someone say about chasing performance metrics, because that was a very profound thing you said, because I related to that. Right. And I'm pretty much doing the same thing. I did it as a broker, and very sneakily, right, have been doing it in my new life. Right. And that was thank you for that. Do you know, it's interesting. As you know, I've done a lot of traveling. I've experienced a lot on the outside and on the inside, right? And when I'm, let's say, in India, by the Ganges, I feel connected to the divine. But when I find myself back at home, I find myself opening my emails, I find myself dealing with daily life, that feeling of connection that I had when I was in the Ganges has been destroyed. Destroyed in the sense of I'm not connected to it anymore, right?
Yeah.
And I think many people listening to this can have that kind of same sense where if they're under the Bodhi tree, everything is beautiful. But the moment they're not under the Bodhi tree, it all falls apart. How do we stay with the feeling under the Bodhi tree when we're back at home, when we're no longer under the Bodhi tree?
Wow. These are the kind of questions that bring you closer to God. So well done. Two things. One, the short-term fix is go back to India. I mean, let there be that wanderlust that's always alive and always being exercised. Nobody should come back and say, well, it's just as spiritual here, so I should be able to find it in my own backyard. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty tall order. And yes, it's true. But, life is so beautiful and people are so awesome. It's like, do all you can, and I do this myself, to be on as many adventures as manageable. 1 a year, 1 every 2 years, 4 a year, whatever works with your schedule. Some years you can travel a lot more than last year. And give yourself these things. Too often I would want to be more austere and be like, you don't need that. And you don't need the money, and you don't need to buy that new shirt. You don't need to buy this house or that trip or fly first class. It's like, I want to. Well, do it. You should be doing it until you don't want to, in balance with all other things. Don't be a denier based on philosophical, idealistic principles that it's not necessary and anybody could be happy with no matter what the lack is in their life. So I think we really, one of the secrets to living the life of your dreams, I once wrote, is to begin now, today, start living your dreams to any little degree that you can. The second answer is to ultimately realize, which is, I think, what I'm dancing around and what you alluded to, is that, the Bodhi tree is a movable feast. In spite of what I just said, it does exist around every corner in our lives. And that doesn't mean, be a hermit at home or in your backyard and damn it, learn to be happy. But as instead of only adventuring or mostly adventuring, internationally into really exotic cultures, we can adventure locally. When coronavirus is gone, we can adventure to the beach or to the park or to a gathering with friends or at a movie theater or at a late night party. And really, God is absolutely everywhere. The beauty is absolutely everywhere. The sublime is absolutely everywhere. And I think ultimately, as we both sense, we can find that anywhere at any time. But until we get there, enjoy the travel and the periodic adventures, and always be working that muscle to find the Bodhi tree no matter where you are, whether it's people watching at the mall or anywhere else. I mean, it is just as magical there. Easier to see when you give yourself the spice of diversity in life and you live as well-rounded and adventurously as you reasonably can.
Mentioned the word cathartic and how writing is cathartic for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent many hours on a therapist's couch, not as the therapist, mind you. And I've also spent many hours journaling. Mm-hmm. And I would journal. I started journaling at my late teens, I'd say. And this was before any of the books. And I realized how cathartic it was to be able to just let it all out. Yeah. No one was going to read it. No one was going to shame it. I was just going to let it out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can relate to what I'm about to say, but I remember the first time I ever wrote a blog post and posted it live. I was a nervous wreck because I was like, oh my goodness. No one ultimately cared that I was writing this blog post, but this was happening inside me. I was like, oh my goodness. What about if people don't like what I'm saying? What about if I get hate mail? What about if my family gets upset with me? What about? And I was wondering whether you had that kind of similar experience when it came to finally putting your work out there. And you had the cathartic experience of kind of writing as a kid and as a young adult, but no one ever read it. Right. What was that moment like for you when you were like, oh no, people are actually going to read what I wrote and what is about to happen?
Yeah. I mean, it was terrifying. I was petrified. You put up this blog post, but the blog post, nobody was paid to review it and let you know what they thought of it. And that's kind of what happens with books. You write this book, and every step of the way, it was going okay. I got the agent signed on, wanted to represent it. That's a good sign. She got us a book deal. Okay, this person that seems smart likes it too. That's great. But then once they start printing out these advanced copies, they send it to reviewers, and reviewers are paid to say if it's good or not. That was absolutely petrifying because this is the work of my heart. And again, I don't know how memoir writers do it. It's scary enough when it's fiction and it's about a character I made up and not entirely about me. But it was really scary. And the reviews, I think it's something where I've gotten a little bit more inoculated and my skin has gotten a little bit thicker as more books have come out, and just in the aggregate more, there's, you start to realize there's going to be one bad professional review for every 4 or 5 good ones, and that's fine. And you'll continue to be able to write. And it feels I'm getting a little more used to it. But at the same time, I don't want to not be sensitive, because I think my sensitivity is a strength. And the reason that I am a full-time storyteller, which is maybe something you can relate to as well as a full-time creative. So it's really scary. And I guess what I would say is, if you or anyone out there who consumes creative content in any form, movies or songs or books or anything, just, I beg you, learn the difference between it's not for me and it's awful, because somebody somewhere was putting their heart and soul into it, even if it felt completely flat for you. And that's just something I remind myself is, people like to put things down because it gives them sort of a sense of power or superiority. Here's how I would have done this book better or differently. Well, okay, you haven't written any books, but fine. And I just remind myself it's not personal. It's not about me. It's one opinion of many, and there's no book that will be for everyone. And so actually, if I'm writing books that get people riled up, and some people love it and some people hate it, that's actually more what I'm trying to do than to write something right in that wet noodle middle of the road where everyone goes, meh.
I feel like we are having a conversation that has been going on for 15,000 years. Does that make any sense?
Oh, it does. It does. I feel like we've definitely been able to tap into that space. And I'm a spiritual person. I believe in serendipity and paths crossing for a reason. And I often think, I think about sort of what I have done in the film and TV world, and it's highlighted by, my work in the Kindness Diaries. That's my most notable work. And, I think about what that means, like, and the purpose that it serves. It's almost like, I feel like the growth that I've had in this world is indicated, or is connected to that show. It makes sense that that's the show that would cross paths with me, because those are the things that I needed to learn. And those are the things that sort of are in my heart, like it could have been CSI Miami or something, but that it's just very serendipitous to me that you and I cross paths, for one, that you cross paths with my brother, and then we met, and then we started working on the show together, because it sort of makes sense. And honestly, when I listen to the music that I made for the show, I often think to myself, like, this is really sort of the spirit, or this sounds like the core of who I am. Like, humanity to me sounds like my spirit, so of course it makes sense. Yeah. I feel like when we have these conversations, when we really tap in, comes from a very deep place, very cosmic place, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think what I'd like you to do, if you're willing,
I am willing.
You're willing, is to play us Humanity. And before you play us Humanity, I want everyone to know that this is a very special song for me. I have no idea how to make music. I just have none. I don't know what I'm doing, right? But I know what music touches my humanity. Hello, everyone. It's Leon here, aka the Kindness Guy. If you like my videos, which I hope you do, don't forget to press the subscribe button, and also to ring the little bell so that the notifications notify you that I have a new video out in the world.